Hello, good morning. My name is Isaac Kumi, and today I present to you Driver App. Now, Driver App, it's a cross-platform application built with Flutter, and it helps drivers to send a digital information about their car, that's their car number plates, without having to take a picture or have a real text picture of their car number plate. So what the app does is you scan the car number plate and it will generate a QR code and the generated QR code can be used for any other processing at all, because the code can be rescanned to generate the actual information that was scanned initially. So for my demo, for my presentation, I'm going to explain the code that is behind the app and also a demo about the app itself. So without much ado, let's dive into the code. So this is the project Driver App, and I'm in Android Studio. And I would like to start from the pub spec YAML. So the way Flutter works is Flutter works, it depends on other dependencies. So there are dependencies that help developers to use Flutter with ease. So over here, I've defined quite some number of dependencies that will be used in the application. So we have a version of the app, environment, dependencies, Flutter SDK. So these are default dependency that comes with Flutter. So the one I added was native state. So this one basically stores the state of application in Flutter. And I also have KL Flutter. So KL Flutter, it's a dependency that helps to scan things in Flutter. Then we have Flutter SVG, Toast, barcode scan, HTTP for making HTTP requests, Flutter secure storage for helping store user information across the application, RSDAT, so reactive that. I will come to that later in there. So connectivity checks whether the app is connected to the internet. Suite alerts, it's for showing alerts in a nicer way and a better way, and a flash bar. So from here, I will now also, we can see some few folders over here. We have the asset folder, build iOS, and the lib folder. So the asset folder is where I defined all my images and SVG files I'll be using for the application. Now, Flutter, because it's cross-platform, it has iOS and Android. But then, since you can use just one code for both, all the code lives in the lib folder. So I'll dive into a lib folder and explain what's going on over here. Now, over here, I have a folder called block and some few DAT components. Now, the main .dat is the entry point of the Driver App application. And I would like to talk a bit about the block pattern before I later come into the main app. Now, block, basically, it works the same way as the MVC architectural pattern. Now, block is just an acronym for business logic components. So it's something that uses reactive programming to handle the flow of data within the application. So it basically sits in the middle, it's like a middle where that monitors changes in the application, changes in the UI and all. So, so inside the block, I have an API .dat. So this one basically designing the shape of my API, the structure of my API, because I'm making an API request to my login, my user login and sign up is an API. So over here, I'm designing the shape of my API, the structure, basically. And I have validator.dat. Over here, just a block of code for validating input fields in the application. So over here, there's a string email pattern. So this one basically checks whether email entered is valid or it's wrong. So over here, I'm checking for the length of the password. So basically, validators are just validating input fields in the application. Now, I also have a folder called Commons. Now, the Commons folder, just a utility class, name it utility. And as many people know, sometimes we end up using the same code over and over in an application. So instead of copying codes and copying codes all around, I put everything together in a common class. So basically, it's like a reusable code in the application. So I'll be using tools everywhere in the application. Remove it for removing an object, loader for loading, and app snack bar, and to come from JSON to convert data to JSON objects. And I have barcode.dat. Now, because the app will convert text input into barcode, I wrote this block of code to handle that. So over here, I'm just requiring the required dependencies, the material that, the rendering that, and the Flutter Keras, the Keras Flutter dependency. So this one basically helped me to convert the text to a barcode. Now, over here, I'm just defining a stateful class, a stateful widget in Flutter. So a stateful widget means there will be some changes in the class. And so when I'm developing I'm creating a global key with a global key keyword, and it's just an input field, a test, a dummy test that I created. Then after everything is done, I return a scaffold widget. Now the scaffold widget contains an app bar, which is the root widget. The root, so scaffold, so I'm returning an app bar, which is what will display at the very top of the page. And with this text, and I'm centering the text. And aside that, I'm also adding a couple of actions to the app bar title. So a pop-up menu item with a logout text. And so over here, I'm sending an event on the text. That means when someone clicks on the text, what should happen? So when I click when you tap on it, it should reroute to the login page. So that's basically what's happening here. That's basically what's happening in this block of code. So yeah, so, and I also have a layout builder. There's just a widget, a content widget, and it returns a layout builder widget. So it's basically a widget returning a widget. Because of time, I wouldn't go into detail what's going on over here. I'd like to. Then over here, I also have the dashboard. Dashboard is also a widget. A stateful widget, and it basically I will show a demo of what's going on here, like an actual demo of what's going on, so that so the dashboard, it's also a widget. I mean, basically everything in Flutter is widget based. So over here, I'm just building a widget and just returning them and now the endpoint that. Now, because my login is connected to an API, I define an endpoint that will basically help me get information, store, and do what I want to do with the API. So instead of just writing everything repeatedly, I wrote them in a class so that my work will kind of be will be easy. So that anyone who takes this code can easily understand and maintain the code and continue. So I have an endpoint, class endpoint, and it has the base URL, that's the API endpoint. So I have the login URL that fetches hit the login endpoint, email verification that checks, that verifies users who have registered. We also have change password URL, basically helping the user to change his password, reset password URL. So that's pretty much what this code is doing. Then in the login.dat, so inside the login.dat, this one renders the login screen. Now, and in the login screen over here, what I'm doing is I'm checking whether the user is connected to the internet. So that's basically what line 15 is doing. And the secure storage. So the secure storage basically helps to store user information across the application. Then the block pattern. So like I said, the block pattern it uses reactive programming to monitor everything that goes on in the application, including forms, UIs, and everything. So over here, I wanted to use the block pattern on the user input so that it can check and validate whatever information that the user inputs. So in the block pattern, like I showed earlier, I have validator.dat. So the validator.dat will help me in the login to check the user email, whether it's correct, and also validate the user password. Then the API user service provider. So this one helped me to communicate with the user API and so forth and so on. Yes. And so yeah, so just basically renders the login, and there's a class handling that it's a stateful class, and I'm defining an initialized state. So that means when this app runs, it should init it should run this block of code. Yeah, so basically an animator that's like a circular animator that runs when the login state is being called. So now there's just an asset name, a car.svg. So when the login screen renders, it shows a car. So that's where it is being pulled from. Then the rest over here, it's just a scaffold. I'm just defining the container, the color, the text fields, and the columns that will be rendered in the login screen. So over here, you can see an email form. So just basically defining the input field and passing over the block pattern, passing the block pattern over the input field so that it can help me with the validation and so forth and so on. So I also have the QR code to .dat. Now what this app does is it's like the name of the file implies, QR code to test. So with this app, after the user has been able to then generate a QR code for the car number plate, it doesn't end there. I mean, when you want to use for further processing and further processing of documents, you cannot use the QR code to do whatever you want to do. So with this one, you can just scan the generated QR code, and it will return the test, the actual test that you imputed earlier. And for future works, I'm also planning on adding a share button, and so that you can easily share the generated code to various social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. So I haven't been able to implement that. I'm still working on it, and yeah. So there's a UI for the QR code to that. So basically over here, I'm just defining the widget, like the UI for the UI for the test to the QR code to test. So over here, as you can see, I have a scan method. It returns a feature that's like a promise in JavaScript, and it's an asynchronous. So that means I don't have to wait for it to finish before I continue the rest of code. And I've put in a try catch block, and so I'm waiting for the scanner to finish scanning, then change the state of the application to the barcode, and when it's done, get a raw content of the results. So the raw content is basically the text field that is inside the QR code. So the rest are basically just checking to see whether the camera, the user then click on the camera, then you alert the user to click on the camera and of the app. And so I'm going to run the app here. Okay, so let me just hot restart the app. Let me stop it and run it again. Okay. Okay, so this is the loader that I was talking about. Yeah, so this is the login screen for the driver app. So over here, I'm using the block pattern to validate the email field and the input field. And it's connected to a live API that I built for the application. So I'm going to enter my email address. Then I'm going to enter a wrong password. Now you can click here to view your password. Okay. Okay, so yes, I'm waiting there. Okay, so failed. So this is where the toast is coming from. So failed user authentication. So I'm going to enter the correct password and log in. And the correct password is log in again. All right. So now I'm logged in and my name is here, the QR code. So this is basically like the dashboard, right? So we have register new user, QR code, and generate QR code, verify QR code, and test driver performance. So the first one, the first card is for just registering new users on the application. And the QR code, this part over here, is for scanning, generating a QR code. So I can just enter maybe mobile app, maybe card number GR 124512 21. So I click on generate code and it will, can see that this thing changed. Let me enter, let me generate another one. Maybe GA 522. So as soon as I click on the generate, this one will change. So I see this one changed color, and this is a generator barcode, and it can be used for, it's unique for every input entered here, and it can be used for any other any other processing that the user wants to use it for. So when I click on back, there's also verify QR code. So over here, you want to check whether the code actually corresponds to the input data you entered. And because I'm using an emulator on the PC, I might not be able to scan the generated QR code. Rather, I will, however, click on it and see it's an emulator, so that's why it's showing this way. But it's supposed to scan the generated QR code, and it should fetch the text out of the QR code, and you'll be able to share the text to any other body for further processing. So I'll do this on my phone, and I'll add a screenshot to my documents, my write-up. Yeah. So yeah, so right there is flash on. So as though you are doing this in the evening, just click on the flash, and it will turn on your torchlight for you to, so that you can have a clear picture of what you are trying to scan. So that's pretty much what this app is about. And thank you for your time.